Hello, and my name is Ralph Leonard, and you may know me already as a writer for the None of the Above network. Basically, what I'm doing here is doing a Ask Me Anything live stream. So, for those of you who are listening or watching, or however you get this, you can basically ask me any question you want, and I'll do my best to answer it as best I can. Now, I just have to look for the questions or see if anybody's bothering at this time of night to listen to my voice. So hold on with me. Just retweeting it from Sam. Okay, let's see now. Hopefully there's some people. 7 viewers. That's good. 8 now. Oh, this could be a good night. Now the chat box is loading up. Yeah, sadly my laptop is on a little bit on the slow side, so it does take a while for me to get these things. Okay, just loading up now. Still, okay, here it is. Now, just want to make sure, can you lot in the chat hear me? Okay, so, well, the first question I've got in is from Sam, or none of the above if you're looking at the chat, which is basically asking me on the Labour Party anti-Semitism row. And for those of you who don't know, basically what happened was Naz Shah, who is a Labour Party member of Parliament and the aide to Mr. McDonnell, I believe, she basically put out something on Facebook where she pretty much says that her solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict was to basically put Israel into the United States, or um, put Israelis, send them back to the United States, or something along those lines. And obviously there was a lot of uproar about it, and um, a lot of people got angry. But the thing that really set this thing off was when Ken Livingston tried to defend her, and he gave a really awful way of defending her and saying how she wasn't anti-Semitic, and it was such a confusing statement he gave. And or he pretty much, and then he said that talks about how Hitler was a Zionist or stuff like that. And if you if you're saying that Hitler is a Zionist, then you pretty much destroyed any credibility that you've got. And well, the wider issue from this has always been, does the left or the Labour Party have a problem with anti-Semitism? And in my opinion, I would say yes, because because anti-Semitism nowadays is a lot different from, say, the anti-Semitism of the 1930s or the traditional Catholic anti-Semitism of the Middle Ages. What a lot of people don't realize is that racism and anti-Semitism evolves. And before it used to be religious, then it was ethnic or racial, and now it's Israel is the vessel that's being used to spread this toxic hatred. And unfortunately, a lot of the people who do sort of use anti-Zionism or anti-Israel criticism as a disguise for anti-Semitism, and unfortunately, it hurts that the left endorse it. And I think that it has to be fought and defeated. That's my opinion on it. Sorry for being so long-winded. Another question here is: are there any interviews? Oh, so are interviews something you would like to do in the future? Uh, yes, yes, but I'd have to practice it first. Um, What do you think of Hitchens's anti-Zionism? Um, I don't have a problem with it personally, and I actually agree with, or I can understand it, and I actually agree with quite a lot of it. Um, I particularly like his sort of critique of Zionism as pretty much like a secular nationalist sort of pseudo religion. I particularly like that. Um, who would you like to interview? Um, I would like to interview Peter Hitchens. I would like to interview Majid Nawaz. Yeah. Um, I can't think of any more at the moment, but those two would be two people who I'd like to interview. Um, Here's another question by Castre Joe 67, or Carlos as I know him, or Carlito as I call him. He says, if Brexit is successful, how will it affect the smaller countries of Europe like Portugal and Greece? Um, to be honest, I'm not actually quite sure at the moment. So I'll have to think about that one. People are saying, why would I want to interview Peter Hitchens? Well, I would like to interview him because I find his story a little bit fascinating. That how he used to be like a atheist, Trotskyite, sort of very anti-theistic, and now he's a very sort of religious, conservative blowhard. And I'd like to know how he sort of got to that position. And actually, he's actually quite an interesting person to read and listen to. He's someone who's not afraid to have his own opinions and think for himself. He doesn't really always agree with the Conservative Party. In fact, he hates the Conservative Party as much as the Labour Party. He thinks the Conservative Party is not conservative enough. And I would find it interesting to interview him. Another Archie asks, "Where is Sam?" He's in the chat. Yeah, that's what. Also, Sam asked me, "What do I think of Osama Hassan?" I think he's a very principled person. It seems like a very honest, intelligent, decent person, and I appreciate and I admire what he wants to do with Quilliam in terms of creating a reformed discourse within Islam and within the Muslim community in Britain. And I wish him good luck with that, and hope he achieves the best. And let's see. So okay, Momonga Chan asked me, Teal Deer released a video where he gave some critique to the anti-feminist movement and so-called pornage videos. If you saw that, what do you think of his criticism? To be honest, I don't really watch Teal Deer's videos. To be honest with you, they're not that interesting to me. So I really don't know what the content of the videos are that you're referring to, so I can't really answer that. So sorry about that. Okay, favorite books, fiction or non-fiction, Sam? Okay, another question. What do you think of people saying that all Muslims are complicit in jihadist attacks and that we should kill them all? Well, they're fucking idiots. Simple answer. It's not that. It's not. It doesn't take a genius to get the point that not all Muslims are complicit in terrorist attacks. So yes, it's just simple logic. So I just think they're just being idiotic and being very blinded to the situation. And Archie says to me, "Ralph, you're a good man. Keep up the good work." Thank you very much, Archie. Well, okay, Sam says, like he said both. So for fiction, I like pretty much any Ernest Hemingway novel. I just find them very, very satisfying to read. Another book I like is To Kill a Mockingbird, which is still another amazing book with an amazing story, and it's particularly since Harper Lee recently died, so I should mention that. Non-fiction books, I like God Is Not Great by Hitchens. I also like there's a book called A Line in the Sand by James Barr, which is on the Sykes-Picot Treaty, which I only mention it now because I'm currently reading it. So that's another non-fiction book I like. Sam asks me again, what are your reflective thoughts on the Pegida rally we covered? Well, I didn't like the rain, so that's the first thought. Actually, I found it quite interesting, and that often sometimes with the media when they cover these sort of things, they can be they can just like focus on one aspect. They can go there and try and look for stuff that they're looking for. So if you want to find sort of out and out bigotry, you can find it, or you can look for it and you can find it. But when we were there, that many of the people were not necessarily bigoted as such, but they had like, an honest point of view, a sort of a sentiment that they felt around this issue to do with Islam. And some of it I didn't really agree with, and some of it was sort of borderline sort of prejudice, but a lot of it was more based on sort of ignorance about the various nuances, and not out of, say, the idea that they're sort of malicious, horrible people. So it was kind of nice to get those sort of nuances around. That's my thoughts on it. So any more questions? Boris says he makes everyone mad. Not nice of you to notice it till now. Um, do you feel you learned a lot about how the media journalists in our country operate, generally speaking, at the Pegida event? That was by Sam. Yes, yes, I'll say so. Yeah, especially when you want to interview the say like the big name people like Anne Marie Waters or Tommy Robinson, how you have to sort of consult their media representative in order for you to interview them. And also I got to be the cameraman, so got I learned that aspect of it as well. Boris says, what do you think about people saying that reforming Islam is a hopeless project? And he added a second part to it. Also, do you think it is hopeless? Um, I'll answer in reverse order. Do I think reforming Islam is hopeless? Um, no, no, I don't think it's hopeless, and I think people who do think it's hopeless are a little bit too pessimistic. They're a little bit too, because the um because the let me put it this way, these things sort of take time. I mean, Islam at this point in history is going through a very, it is changing. It is the reason why we're not seeing this reform that we all talk about yet is because it currently is going through it. With and another aspect we have to take into account is the modernization of places like the Middle East and North Africa and South Asia is happened remarkably very fast in the period after the Ottoman Empire. And so it's gone through a lot, that region. So of course, of course it's very sort of, there's a lot of turmoil, it's unstable, but in the end I do think it will get through it, because things can't always be this bad. I mean, in the long term it will get better. In the short term, medium term, it may get worse, but in the long term things will get better. And let's see, any more questions? Sam asks, why were your hands so shaky when you filmed the Anne Marie interview? Well, uh, well, because I don't know. It just started shaking. I don't know. Maybe it was something to do with Anne Marie. I don't know. um, Grant Bayless says, what do I think of drone warfare? Um, well, I think it's a legitimate tactic, legitimate tactic of warfare. I don't think it's illegal as such. and it's not necessarily immoral. It's a tool, so its morality depends upon how you use it. So like, if you're using it just to deliberately kill civilians, then of course it's immoral. But if you're using it in a targeted fashion to try and take out suspects or targets that you know, legitimate terrorists or war criminals, then yeah, it's a legitimate tactic. And Lucas wants to know, what do I think of the American election and who do I want to get elected? Um, well, of the American election, it's an absolute sort of freak show. That's the best way I can, especially on the Republican side. It is an absolute freak show. Because there's no sane person that I would ever vote for, even if even if it was a lesser of two evils. I don't think I could vote for any of them. And on the Democrat side, I would, if I was an American citizen, I would never vote for Hillary Clinton. No, I'll never vote for her because to me she's she's a manipulator, a liar, a snake, uh, and obviously very corrupt. You know, but she's not the only one. But she's also represents this sort of old-fashioned sort of corporatist Democrat sort sort of person. So by process of elimination, it would be Bernie Sanders, who I would vote for. But I don't necessarily agree with Bernie on everything, but there's some things I like about him. So it would be Bernie Sanders who I would elect, and Ali Ali Yaft. Where's where's the question? Okay, she asks Ali Yaftaf, do you think within the context of the doctrine, she's referring to Islam, that there is much room for reform? Um, well, I'm not necessarily the most knowledgeable person on Islamic theology or the sort of minutiae of Sharia, but I would say that I'll give you an example of how Islamic law has changed because it's changed before slavery. Like if you were to take a very sort of literal reading of the Quran, the Hadith, and the early sort of scholarship of the four madhabs or schools of thought within Sunni Islam, then slavery is a legitimate tactic. It's a legitimate. It's not illegal to own slaves, but over time, over centuries, particularly in the 18th and 19th century, partially to do with pressure from British Empire, partially due to pressure for modernization, the Ottoman Empire got rid of slavery. And there is nowhere in the Middle East where it is legal, and that's the keyword legal, for you to own slaves. Um, so, using that as an example, I believe you can do that for many other of the more unsavory things within Islam. I think it is possible. It may be mental gymnastics. It may be, you know, twisting words or playing around with the syllables of the Arabic language and all that. I'm not the most knowledgeable person on that, but I think it's possible anyway. I'm an optimist at heart. And Boris asked, "Do I have a crush on Anne Marie Waters?" No, no. Simple as that. No. Momongo Chan asks, "Have you ever seen Sharia patrols?" No, not in my. Um, no, I've never seen a Sharia patrol. I've heard of them, but they take place in like some suburbs of London, but I've never seen them myself. Um, Now, Sam asks me, "What's your instinctive reaction when you heard Paul Weston say that no Muslim should be able to stand for public office at the Pegida rally?" Um, well, I was a little bit shocked that he said it so openly and outright. It kind of defeats the point when they all Tommy and Anne and Paul talked about a new beginning, this movement was peaceful, was democratic, and standing for defending liberal values against Islamic values. Yet they Paul Weston doesn't want Muslims to run for public office, which is like the most undemocratic thing you could ever say. um, let's look for the other question. Okay, Ali Aftafta didn't like my answer on Clinton. She wants to know, what do you base your analysis of Clinton on other than the media's? Uh, I I don't quite understand that question, um, because technically I do get it. Well, that's the only way I know about Hillary Clinton, from media outlets. And well, Imran says, "Why is Boris such a faggot?" I don't know. Ask him. um, okay, she says, "What do you base your analysis of Clinton on, policy-wise? Where is your disagreement? If she's the most qualified for the position, you agree with policy, should you allow her persona to deter you?" Oh, someone's getting a little bit sophisticated here. Um, wow, that's actually a very good question. I look, I really don't mean to dodge your question, but I've got my answer, but it's just too long for me to say in a live stream. Um, but for the last part, if she's the most qualified for the position, well, she may be qualified in the sense, in the sense that she was a former senator and her husband was once the president. But sorry about that. I can't answer that. Um, no, Sam says, "What do you think of Cenk Uyghur's recent statement on previous views he expressed on, on the Armenian genocide?" Um, well, it was a bit of a cop out when you read Cenk Uyghur's statement. He he didn't. Yeah, pretty much all, and he's published on a sort of obscure blog, so it pretty much was signifying that he didn't want people to know about it, and he didn't want people to. He's allowing his ego to come in the way of the truth. He doesn't want to admit that he was wrong, and the fact that he still can't quite sort of admit openly that he was wrong. Just sort of, I just don't understand it. I think he's just allowing his ego to get in the way of the truth. And, and we have Ali, who's still a big Hillary supporter. And okay, Sam asks, what do you think of Kyle Kalinske? Um, I used to somewhat like him, but I'm not interested in him anymore. He's just not that interesting, and also his views on the Syrian civil war are to me very odd because he has this weird view that uh, that Assad and the rebels are equally on the same are, are doing things very equally, that they're both as bad as each other, and he seems to sort of brandish all the rebels as sort of Islamic jihadist types, and he doesn't sort of separate sort of secular nationalists or moderate Islamist rebels to jihadists and all that. So he he doesn't believe in a no-fly zone yet. He's very pro-refugee, which to me makes no sense because in order if you seriously want to stop refugee flow, then you have to stop why they're coming here. And why they're coming here is the fact that Assad, helped by the Russians, is bombing places like Aleppo and Hama and Homs, making people run away from their homes and flee to Turkey, and then they come to Europe that way. And if you don't stop the bombs, it's simple. If you stop the bombs, you stop the refugee flow. So that's Karl Kalinske gone, and Ali says, what is your beef with the woman? Um, well, she's quite corrupt. She also takes a uh, yes, and she accepts donations from sort of quite dodgy places, like from Saudi Arabia to dodgy businessmen from Indonesia and all that sort of thing. So that's one beef I have with her. I don't know her personally, so I can't. Maybe I shouldn't have maybe I shouldn't have quite assassinated a character, but yeah, there are sort of aspects of her I don't like. And Momonga Chan says, "Why do you hate all of womankind?" I I don't hate women. He's addressing that to Sam. So Rashid Coleman. Rashid Coleman asks, would you consider having a recorded conversation with Owen Jones as representative for mainstream left via a confirmation biases or otherwise? Yeah, I would consider having a conversation with him. Yeah, sure. It'd be interesting to see what he thinks. What do you think to the vehement protests against the use of drone warfare because of collateral damage and the lack of human presence with the use of the drone? Um, I think some of their concerns are legitimate. I think I do think that drones at the moment are being used a bit too much. I mean, they're used as like a stopgap measure, as a short-term fix to a very long-term problem. That that as though the solution to sort of terrorism is if we just kill as many commanders as we can find, then naturally the structure would just fall apart. Because as though yeah, it's sort of we sort of talk about Al Qaeda, ISIS, and these groups as though that they're the mafia. That if you just get rid of the head guy, then all the entire structure of the organization will collapse. Well, it doesn't quite like that. These jihadist organizations are very sort of horizontally integrated with each other. There isn't really there's hierarchy, but there isn't. It's not like you get rid of the head guy and then it all collapses. That if you get rid of one guy, then someone will pop up to replace him very quickly. And and as for the lack of, so yeah, that's my opinion on the drone thing. And Boris asked me, "What do you think about the polls of Muslims in France and Britain?" Well, I can talk about the Britain one, which is it's quite concerning and alarming that you have many you'll find many Muslims in Britain who have sort of rather worrying views on sort of stuff around or very conservative attitudes towards stuff like gay rights, women, marriage, um, and also another. I think I saw a stat that said that I think over half of them wouldn't give terror tip-offs or something like that, which that to me was a little that really did sort of worry me. That seems like quite a very tribal mindset. And as for the one in France, uh, the French Muslims, when polled, seem more liberal than British Muslims, for example. So it's not, there isn't really much for me to worry about in France. Not that there isn't issues, obviously, but that's the difference. Um, okay, Ali is arguing with Sam over Hillary Clinton. So that's the thing. Um, sorry about this. Just scrolling up just to find more questions. Um, okay. Mo Manga Chan is criticizing me a bit. Okay, he says, to be frank, this stream is a little boring, so here's a suggestion: throw Sam in and make it more of a two-man discussion. But look, this is the first time I've ever done. This is the first time I've ever done this sort of thing, and I'm not naturally a speaker or an orator or someone, and I'm naturally a shy person. So forgive me if this is a little boring. This is the first time I've really done this sort of thing. So that's the explanation. Um, another chat moves too fast. Uh, so another question. So the EU has been under a lot of scrutiny lately your thoughts on the European Union. Um, wow, this you give me deep subjects to go into here. The European Union, obviously, it has a lot of flaws. There are a lot of aspects to it that most people don't understand, and it's very, especially stuff around the legalisms around of the European Union. You know, there are aspects to it that are good. You know, like the trying to have a more integrated Europe. You know, freedom of movement in its more ideal form is a good, but um, but as we see now, I think stuff like the refugee crisis, the economic hardships Europe's going under, particularly in Southern Europe, in Portugal, Spain, and Greece, and Italy, is giving rise to sort of populist parties that are very anti-European, anti-EU, and I can't, I, I don't think it will fall apart. But personally, for me, I think we should abolish it and then start all over again. That's my opinion in shortened. Uh, how old am I, and how did you come to this space? Um, I'm 19 years old, and I I became a, none of the above. Actually, it was actually kind of by accident I came across none of the above. Was basically, I think it was around a year ago, maybe a little bit more, that I encountered their interview with Tommy Robinson, and I really liked the interview, and and then saw that they had a Twitter account, and it just so happened to be on that day that they sent out a tweet saying they wanted a new writer, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. So I said to Sam, "Oh, can I be one of your writers?" And he said, "Yeah, just send me a piece." And I sent him the piece, and then yeah, that's how I became a writer for None of the Above Network. Carlos David said, "You 19, Ralph." Yeah, I am 19. And um, Rashid Coleman says, if you were to talk to Owen Jones about immigration and or Brexit, what would you say to correct the confirmation bias that talking about these issues is only a backdoor for racists? Uh, well, I'll say to them, if you can't, how would you be able to sort of disprove the, say, the more Little Englander myths, or the racist point of view, if you can't talk about it? How would you be able to disprove it? How would you be able to find out what is true and what is right from what is lies and what is wrong if you can't talk about it openly? And I have no problem. I have no problem with people who sort of don't like the European Union necessarily. There are many reasons why people don't like him. Some of them are perfectly legitimate. Just I just think we just need to have a more grown up discussion around it. Uh, Boris says, I know Sam expressed his views on this, but can you rant on about the new NUS president? Sorry, I can't. I don't. I'm not good at ranting, but she's an idiot. That's pretty much what I'm gonna say. She's a fucking idiot. Um, Sam asks, "What do you think of David Pacman?" Uh, Pac-Man. Um, sorry, for some reason the image of Pac-Man just came into my mind when I heard David Pacman. um, he's a very intelligent fellow, very rational. And I like watching his stuff. A lot of what he says is perfectly reasonable, and I agree with most of what he says. Most, yeah, so that's my opinion. Um, One also, Sam asked before, what do you want to see from none of the above in the future? Is there anything you want us to do that we're not doing already? Um, suppose just interview. We should interview more famous people. Yeah, or try to interview more bigger names, so to speak. Um, as for doing things that we're not doing already, I'm not sure, but I'll have to think about that. I'm not quite. I can't think of anything at the moment. Oh, that was a good idea by Carlos, where he said talking about politics with young people in urban areas. That's a good idea. Mm. Views on views on Dave Rubin. It's a very nice guy. I like what he's doing at the Rubin Report, and I like his sort of project he's sort of undergoing at Aura and sort of mounting a, so to speak, a counterattack against the regressive left. And you know, I suppose, I mean, what you can criticize him for, the only thing I would ever really criticize him for is like his interview style. Sometimes it can be a little bit too soft and wimpy, but yeah, but I can understand why he does that because he's not trying to sort of confront people or sort of be aggressive in that way. He's just trying to sort of get the other person to sort of fully articulate their views and sort of so that the listener can truly understand where they're coming from, even if you don't agree with them. So yeah, it's harsh, but you have to sort of balance these things out. Um, who would I go gay for? Um, uh, um, uh, um, I don't know, probably Cristiano Ronaldo. I don't know. I, that's I'm just that's the one that came to our head first. Boris asked views on Fred Meyen's article on the burqa. I haven't read it yet, but I should read it soon. What do I think of Jeremy Paxman's interview style? Um, he's like a little bit too aggressive to the point where like it sort of gets annoying. I think it also depends on who you are interviewing and what the issues are that you're talking about. Because sometimes you need to be a little bit aggressive. So and sometimes you have to be soft and more good mannered. It's what about Jewgate, Ralph? Yeah, what's Jewgate about? None of the above asked me. Do you have an idea of what you want to do as a career? Um, no, no, I'm not quite sure what a future career prospect I would have. I'm not quite sure. Uh, just waiting for any more questions someone might have. Okay, Sam asks, are you hopeful for any countries in the Middle East? Oh, that's- I mean, at this at this current moment in time, it is very hard to be hopeful about the Middle East because I think because to put it brutally, things have gone to shit in that. I suppose the only country I would be sort of mildly hopeful of is Tunisia. In well, it's not Middle East, it's North Africa, but still the same broad area. That's what there's still the same MENA region, Middle East and North Africa. I would only say that because sort of it's still a kind of democracy. It's where and it still has a kind of separation of powers as such between the military, the civilian government, and it sort of has like an independent judiciary. Uh, so so it has like good building blocks, but the what it has to do is sort of obviously solve the its current economic predicament because youth unemployment is at all-time high, and which means that young people now are sort of protesting like a lot because they can't get jobs, and obviously with the recent, well, with the terrorist attacks from last summer, which means that a lot of people, which means it's going to affect its tourist industry, which is going to affect its economy even more. So, so yeah, so Tunisia has good building blocks, but it just has to develop upon it. Uh, and Sam asked me, "What is my view on Israel?" What do you mean by that, Sam? As in, what about Israel? Just be more specific. Uh, Lucas asks, "What do you think about the narrative that drone strikes create terrorists?" Um, well, I think I think it's a rather overrated cliche in the sense that drones, even though drones have been known to kill civilians, and that's true. Though actually, drones are actually rather good at um, rather accurate, and they do kill the target that they're intending to kill. Obviously, you get the odd story about how a drone completely bombs a wedding party when it sort of thinks that there's a terrorist sort of hunched up in there. So obviously, you get those kind of stories, uh, which is obviously a tragedy. Uh, but I don't think it sort of automatically creates. It just sort of creates jihadists like that. No, I don't believe that to be the case. And Boris asks me, "Do you hate music like Hitchens does?" Um, no, I don't hate music. I like music. Yeah. Views on Russell Brand. Uh, an idiot who doesn't know what he's talking about. You know, he thinks he's so smart, but he actually doesn't know a lot. Especially with his. What I found funny was how he talked about people, not voting, sort of getting out of the system, trying to start a revolution, trying to be this sort of anti-establishment maverick, and then just a week before the general election, he um he he gives an interview with Ed Miliband just to lend his support to Ed Miliband, who is part of the establishment and part of the Labour Party and the establishment party. So it just shows what a hypocrite he is. Uh, Views on Cenk Uygur, fat buffalo. That's what he is. Uh, Views on Anna Kasparian. Uh, she's a nice girl. Um, she's obviously intelligent. She's actually one of the better people at TYT. She's not just a complete idiot. She actually sometimes she actually does say the odd truth, but but still a lot of the times I don't really agree with her. And Carlito David says, if Farage had said, "Let's move Bradford west to Pakistan," what would have been the reaction? Uh, well, I'm sure. I'm sure people would have said that Nigel Farage was being a bit of a bigot and a racist. So yeah, I know what you're getting at. That there is a double standard between if, say, Farage had said it to what any old Labour Party member would have said. Um, okay, my views on Nigel Farage. Uh, mm, I don't agree with him on much. Though I can understand why a lot of people sort of gravitate towards his views and his cause with UKIP because he has such a very sort of dynamic personality, and UKIP he sort of really does imprint himself upon UKIP, and he has that sort of soft charisma about him. So I can understand why people sort of like him, but I don't really agree with his sort of worldview, sort of uh, some kind of libertarian-ish point of view. And I certainly don't agree with him about smoking in pubs and all that stuff. uh, and Sam asked me my views on Noam Chomsky. Uh, I think some of his earlier work like his his essay where he criticized like General Sharon's sort of war crimes in Lebanon, his his him pointing out America's hypocrisy in East Timor, and its support of the genocide by Indonesia in East Timor. I think those were good things done by Noam Chomsky, but of recent, in the last sort of decade or so, I think he's really gone off the boil and rather senile on many issues, particularly on Islamic terrorism and all that stuff, where he pretty much says that Al Qaeda and ISIS is pretty much the product of Western imperialism and foreign policy and all that stuff. It's just absolute garbage, really. They have legitimate grievances. That's his favorite soundbite on it. It's just nonsense. Um, so I've really missed a lot of questions. I have to. Okay, views on Sargon of views on Sargon of Akkad. Uh, yeah, he seems like a very good. He seems a good person. I agree with some of what he says, and I don't agree with some of what he says. I do think he obsesses a bit too much around this feminism issue with Anita Sarkeesian and Rebecca Watson and all that and that issue. I think he's sort of beaten that horse dead. It's getting a little bit boring now, but he's all right. Uh, Carlos asked my views on Gad Sad, um, self-entitled narcissistic twat. That's my view of Gad Sad. And views on Sam Sholly. Well, he's an Arsenal supporter, so that's all you need to know. And Rashid Coleman said the point I'm trying to make is that about Owen Jones is that there are many points on feminism, black rights, immigration, Brexit that can be easily reprogrammed if explained to them. Could you explain that? Could you elaborate on that, please, Rashid? Yeah. So, how long have you and Sam been dating? We don't date each other, mate. Views on Israel. Oh, okay. Sam clarifying what he meant by asking me of Israel. Israel's views, my views on Israel's treatment of Palestinians. I use examples of settlements, use of force. Is their use of force self-defense or going too far? Well, on the settlement issue, I don't agree with it. I don't agree with the issue of settlements. I think it's unwise. I don't think it sort of helps the peace process or gives Palestinians any optimism that they can negotiate or come to an agreement with Israel if, say, their land is being sort of taken away from them. From their point of view, that's how they see it. That their land is just being gobbled up from them. And as for the use of force, um, there are times when Israel goes way too far, like sometimes it uses arbitrary arrests a bit too often, or gives harsh sentences to kids who, throw stones. I mean, not that I'm defending kids throwing stones or any of that, because I think it's wrong that parents allow their kids to throw stones, but I also don't believe that kids should be like put into jail for like quite a while because of it. And and there are other times when Israel uses force that, like for example, what happened in that on the beach with the kids playing soccer or football. Sorry, I shouldn't say soccer, football. Um, and then a stray sort of missile hit them and it killed them. And there's stuff like that. I don't think Israel was intentionally out to kill those kids, but it may have been reckless. And so with the Israel with the use of force, whenever you have use of force, there are times where it will kill innocent civilians. Sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's not, and sometimes they are actually doing it for self-defense. Like with the Gaza thing, what is Israel meant to do when you have people hurling rockets at you and attempting to kill your civilians? I mean, what are you meant to do? They can't just take it and say, uh, well, we shouldn't fight that because people are not going to like us anymore. So yeah, that's what I've got to say on it. Uh, Views on Mo Ansah. He's my views on Mo Ansah is he's a proven liar, charlatan, crook, and yeah. So that's really all I've got to say of him. I don't even understand why people half take him seriously anymore. The only use he's got is the comedy value. That's the only use he's got right now. Uh, Views of on Mehdi Hassan. Um, Obviously, I don't agree with him on most stuff, particularly when it comes to terrorism, Islam, foreign policy, Middle East. There's some nice things he says about more domestic based issues, particularly around like the economy and stuff like that. Though I do like to watch his show on Al Jazeera when he interviews sort of famous people, and I do like his interview style. It's like he sort of he's always captured that perfect equilibrium between being aggressive and being more laid back. I think he's gotten that sort of equilibrium right. It's just that the content of what he's saying is most of the time absolute bollocks, but that's an issue for another day. Um, Rashid says my views of Abby Martin. Um, well, a proven 9/11 truther who has a shitty show on TV channel run by the Venezuelan government. and before that it was Putin's on RT run by Putin. So that's the story of her media career. Well, do you think Chomsky is in such a position of responsibility it is hard for him to be controversial? Well, he's not afraid to be controversial, particularly on issues around Israel Palestine, or his views on his political opinions. Like, he's an anarchist, and um, and his views on, or the various war crimes that United States government has participated in the past decades. He's not afraid to talk about that, and he's so. I just think he's not trying to be PC or avoid controversy on Islamic terrorism. I generally believe he truly believes that Al Qaeda and ISIS are some kind of response, or response to American imperialism, in the same way that liberation theology was a response by Latin American Catholics to the various injustices done to them by the governments in there. Thoughts on Tyler Preston? I don't watch much of his videos, so I don't particularly so I don't particularly have much of an opinion on him. Uh, Sam asks, "Why do you dislike Arsenal?" Because because it's Arsenal. That's why I dislike it. Well, let me just say that I'm a Man United fan, and from my earliest memories of football were always the title rivalry that Man United and Arsenal had, like over a decade ago, like particularly between so that 2001, 2, 3, 4 period, when Man United and Arsenal were pretty much always going for the title. And I always remember that's why reason why I always hate them, because I still remember them as our title rivals, even though they're nowhere near we're ever winning the title at this moment, particularly under Arsene Wenger, which seeing Arsenal the way they are now pretty much makes me laugh my tits off. It's just so funny seeing them, it's particularly with the Wenger in, Wenger out debate. And I know Man United are not doing that well either, so I can't gloat too much, but it's still it eases the pain that I feel when Man United are not doing too well, seeing Arsenal do just as badly as well. And Carlos says, "How is he navigating the Israel question without triggering me at 19?" Well, I don't know what about Israel triggers you, but let's look for any more questions. uh, so when will none of the above network go into pornography? I doubt we'll ever go into pornography, mate. But none of the above does sound like a good name for a porn website. let's look for any more. Um, what political topics are you interested in? I'm more interested in foreign foreign policy, and yeah, so that's the more because I'm interested in sort of stuff around international based issues, war, foreign policy, particularly in say what's currently going on in the Middle East and um, with Russia's Russia's rising power in the world. So those topics that I'm more interested in, and Will Todd, yeah, yeah. I'm actually just about old enough to remember that I was only 6, but I do remember when Will Todd scored that goal. Very very devastating. And Carlos David said, "Fuck off, Mac. You can fuck off as well." Um, do I like any other sports other than football? Mm, no, no. What? There's stuff like I can watch the occasional rugby game or tennis, like when Wimbledon comes on or the Australian Open or um, French Open. I can watch stuff like that, but football is really the main sport I like. It's the only sport that can really sort of get the passion out of me. Uh, oh, what games do I like? I like FIFA. I like Fallout. You know the Fallout, like Fallout 4, Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas. I used to like Call of Duty, but pretty much ever since every Call of Duty game since Black Ops has been crap. So I don't really play Call of Duty anymore. Uh, I also like LA Noir. That was a game I really, really liked. Uncharted, a good game as well. Assassin's Creed as well. So uh, just scrolling up. I think Carlos is asking me my opinion on Hillsborough. So recently, the inquest sort of published, um, released the results of the inquest into the Hillsborough disaster. So, which pretty much sort of confirmed what pretty much everyone else knew all along, and how that the Hillsborough disaster was caused by pretty much shit policing and shit crap um, crowd management, and it was a safety issue that you know a negligence of duty to, and how it's sort of I'm glad it sort of came out now, so that at least the families have some measure of peace, and it's sort of really sort of disproved the Sun's notion that the fans were to blame, or these dirty scousers were acting like animals in the stadium, causing their own deaths and all sorts of other nonsense like that. But yeah, so yeah, I'm glad can it's now sort of solved now, and maybe there may be prosecutions. Who knows? But we can only wait and see on that front. Uh, okay, Sam asked me, Ralph, do you think Wenger should go? Uh, well, from the Man United fan in me, no, I want him to stay just so that he can fuck up Arsenal more. But if I was being objective or seeing it from an Arsenal fan's point of view, I would put it like this: like, what more can Wenger actually achieve at Arsenal? I think I just think he's just taken this team as far as he can go now, and I think he's hit his limit. I think it's third or fourth is pretty much as far as he can go. I don't think he has what it takes in him to develop a mentality amongst the players to actually go and win the league. And what's more interesting is that for years now, people have been saying to Arsenal that, oh, if only he could buy world class players to sort of improve this squad, then they can go and win the league. But in the past 3 years, they have bought world class players like Özil, Sanchez, and Czech. Yet they've gone backwards. They've played even more crap than they were before. Except, and it's so shocking for this season that this season was their chance to win the league. This was their chance because Chelsea were absolutely crap. Man United did not turn up for this season. Man City were inconsistent. And then you have Leicester and Spurs above them. That must be painful for every single Arsenal fan to bear that Spurs are playing better football than them and are above them in the league. That must be very painful for them to take. So yeah, Wenger should go. I He's got a year left on his contract. I don't think they'll sack him, and he's not going to sack himself. So I think he'll honor his contract, be you know, see out next season, and then leave afterwards. After that, and Momonga Chan said Russia's rise in power. The US is currently driving oil prices to the ground and crippling their economy. The US has done this before, and I'd say Russia isn't gaining much power as of now. That's very true. I mean, when I meant rising power, I meant military power in terms of like its invasion of Ukraine, its obviously its actions in Syria, its sort of its attempt to sort of have a sphere of influence over its near abroad, the satellite, places in Eastern Europe and Central Asia, like the Baltic states, Serbia, Poland, uh, Kazakhstan, and all the Central Asian states there. That's what I mean by rising power, a military power, even though it's declining power. But I know that I just contradicted myself. Uh, as in, it's exercising its military might, even though it's economically and demographically on the decline. Uh, and Sam's saying we just have to be careful about who we get as a replacement. That's very true. That's very true. I mean, a lot of people are talking about Diego Simeone replacing Arsene Wenger, but I doubt that will ever happen because if Arsene Wenger is to retire, I'm sure people talked about him going upstairs and being part of the board. And as we all know, Arsenal want to play a very specific style of football, the passing, sort of possession based game. And whoever replaces Arsene Wenger will be of that mold. So whether it's like Frank de Boer from Ajax or Joachim Löw, the German coach, or even someone said Roberto Martinez from Everton, but I doubt any Arsenal fan will want him, seen as how crap Everton have been this season. Just looking for Sam asked me views on Goldsmith versus Khan for Mayor of London. Uh, it's a very interesting race. I mean, my vote personally goes to Khan because I just don't like Zach Goldsmith. It's funny because saw a recent thing on the internet where he was being interviewed by this person, and he talked about how he loves Bollywood, which is the Indian film industry. So I'm certain this event was like an Indian cultural event or whatever. And the interviewer then asked him what his favorite Bollywood movies were, and he couldn't answer it. He couldn't answer it. He didn't know what to say. so, obviously he's never watched a Bollywood movie in his life. So that's I found that funny. Um, and also, I don't particularly like how Zach Goldsmith's team is trying to pretty much accuse um, Khan of being a closet Islamist or a sneaky jihadi sympathizer. That's just really cheap smear tactics. um, a guy who has Superman as his avatar is asking me, what are your opinions of Robert Spencer, Pamela Geller, Tommy Robinson, and Gert Wilders? Well, for Robert Spencer and Pamela Geller, I don't really like them. I don't like their point of view. I think often it's quite steeped in bigotry towards Muslims, and also they have some really wacky theories about ISIS and this sneaky Islamist takeover of the U.S. government and all that crap. Uh, Tommy Robinson, he's a weird one because in that I don't think he's he's specifically himself a racist or that he hates Muslims as such. And some of his what he says is obvious has some truth to it, but often the way he often goes about saying what he thinks, especially on Twitter, is very does is very it's not that delicate. Let's put it that way. And it often sort of very looks quite bigoted. No. And as for Gert Wilders, yeah, he's pretty much the same way. He's pretty much in the same boat as Robert Spence and Pamela Geller. I don't particularly, some of his ideas of how he wants to solve this Islamist problem are just weird, like banning the Quran or putting a tax on women who wear the hijab or the headscarf. That's those are just so off the wall that they're just so ridiculous. Also, Sam asked me my views on WWE. Um, it's I'm not interested in it anymore. I mean, I pretty much gave up on WWE after 2007. Uh, that was the last time I really watched WWE seriously. I don't particularly like this new PG era that they're that they're now that it's now under, where John Cena is the face of WWE, and John Cena, who I just hate. I don't know why. I just don't like him. I don't like John Cena, and yeah, it's just not that interesting anymore. Whereas like in the Attitude Era with The Rock, Stone Cold, Triple H in his prime, even Shawn Michaels and them, like it was so much more interesting. And Kane and Undertaker, yeah, it was just it was just more interesting, and I could watch it, and it really did entertain me. I could still watch episodes of Raw now, and it would still entertain me from that era. Whereas now it's just boring. Like the jokes or the promos they do they're not funny or even entertaining in the slightest. Okay, Berry Park is bad though, Ralph. Well, I don't live in Luton and I've never been to Luton, so um, I don't quite know what Berry Park is all about. Apparently from what I heard of Tommy Robinson, is like it's a sort of an area in Luton which is surrounded by Muslim neighborhoods, and too it's not too safe or or stuff like that. So I don't have any more questions. It seems people in the chat. And there's only 3 people watching right now. uh, uh, I think I've pretty much had enough now. If that's okay with you, yeah. Uh, I think an hour and a bit was good enough for me. Uh, but what it was interesting. Why it lasted, and hopefully I hopefully I did well. I mean, this is the first time I've ever done this sort of thing, so forgive me if I wasn't exactly the most articulate or the most interesting in the way I put across my point, or if I and or said but too much. But yeah, it's just my first time. Hopefully, I would improve with practice. So thanks, and hopefully my views were interesting at the very least, even if you disagreed with them. So, so yeah, thank you very much for people who watched. And yeah, I remember yours and Ollie's early videos, Sam, and yeah, they were awful. So yeah, I'm going to end it now. Um, So and so yeah, again, thank you for listening and goodbye.